You are someone who supports Tommy Robinson. You'd actually like him to join Ukip. This is a man, of course, who's a convicted criminal, a man who led the far-right English Defence League and was once considered beyond the pale by the party you now lead, and who said this, Gerard Batten: every single Muslim watching this, on 7/7 you got away with killing and maiming British citizens. The Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again. This is the man you'd like to see join UKIP, and you are backing a call to violence against a whole community.
Your producer asked me onto this programme to talk about Brexit, and I said I'd do that. And they said Tommy Robinson might come up, and I said OK. You've had me on here, I've come here today to talk about Brexit, and now you want to talk about Tommy Robinson. Now, it seems to me that the media is obsessed with Tommy Robinson. So let me finish. If you want Tommy Robinson, why don't you talk about Tommy Robinson? Why don't you invite him onto your show? I've got his number in here.
I will. You can give it to us.
I can give that to you after the show.
But Gerard Batten, you have made...
You ask him these questions directly, because the media say a lot of things about Tommy Robinson.
Why do you want him to be part of UKIP?
The best person to answer the questions about Tommy Robinson is Tommy Robinson, who can give you the truth about what's happened to him. So why don't you ask him on your show?
Right,
no, I'm talking to Joe. You've had a good Joe. You've had a good go.
Siobhan, I'm going to I will let you talk to Gerard in a moment. But first of all, Gerard Batten, it is you who has made Tommy Robinson a thing as far as your leadership
is concerned. No, I haven't. I have been asked constantly about him.
Let me put the question to you, because you want him to join UKIP. UKIP actually has in its constitution very clearly states that they will not have members or former members of the English Defence League joining UKIP. You say you would like him to join and that you changed the rules in order to have him join. So you made it a thing, not me. And don't make it immediate. No, let me finish. You also tweeted in support of those army cadets who were surrounding Tommy Robinson in that picture, which is why we started with that. So let's just get that clear. It is perfectly fair to ask you questions about why you want Tommy Robinson, and I have put into context who Tommy Robinson is. Why do you want that man to join UKIP?
First of all, in our constitution there is a provision which allows us to waive the rule if that's the agreement of the chairman and the NEC. And let me finish, because I'm answering your question, whereby we can waive the rule on prescribed membership of people who've been in prescribed parties, if that's something that we want to do.
Right.
I have said as my personal opinion that I wouldn't mind, I would be in favour of Tommy Robinson being allowed to join, because I think that he's a tremendously brave man. He's done a lot of things that I'm happy to say that I don't condone, I don't approve of, but I think in the great scheme of things, he's a very heroic person who stands up for the victims of industrialised sexual abuse in this country.
All right, well, let's talk about that.
If we could let him in, then I'd be happy with that. But that will be a decision of our party members, not me.
But why do you want a man who has condemned and does condemn whole communities for the crimes of a few?
Because I don't do that. I talk about the ideology.
You support this man.
Well, everybody says lots of things. I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say.
But you want to change the rules in your party.
No, I don't
want
to change
that
the rules.
You would like members to back a change in the rules from someone who led a prescribed organisation.
I would like the rules under our constitution, which can be set aside in particular cases. So I'm not asking for anything completely different from what we've got now, just to be considered in one case.
Right. But
and I think in the great scheme of things, if you look at what he does in its entirety, then it's more good than bad, and I think he's a very brave man that's standing up for the victims. Now, can I say something about the cadets?
No. First of all, I'm going to let Siobhan in, and then we'll come back to the cadets.
The people sticking up for the victims were the very British justice system that had these guys on trial, that he was filming outside. You know, yes, people did let these girls down and probably are letting these girls down, and things got in the way, and these people should have been found much sooner. But it's happened now. There are court cases going on. There have people been prosecuted. And so it is working and it is happening. And from my perspective, Tommy Robinson is jumping on this bandwagon after it has left the station.
All right.
They weren't let down. This was brushed under the carpet for 20 or 30 years by Labour authorities, the social services and Labour authorities, also the police forces, brushed this under the carpet, didn't want to know about it. It's only down to a few journalists and people like... Let me finish, please. You've had a long go.
Hang on, Joe. This is a conversation. It's not just you riding roughshod over everyone.
It's down to a few journalists and people like Tommy Robinson and Peter McLaughlin, who wrote a book on this called Easy Meat, that we know about this at all. If it had been up to the Labour Party, we'd never know about it.
Can I just say...
Well, answer that question,
yeah,
Siobhan.
I completely accept that councils let those girls down. I completely accept that the police let those girls down. But what I'm saying, it's brave social workers, brave victims, people who were willing to stand up and be counted that has got this issue as far as the courts and to system reviewed.
All right, we've talked about this. We've talked about this. Hang on, Gerard. We've talked about this. And the victims. Let's hear from one of the victims, Sammy Woodhouse. Newsnight interviewed her. She was a victim of the grooming scandal in Rotherham. Let's hear what she said.
If they're going to talk about child rape, about the system and the failures, then they should be talking about it as a whole and not just by Pakistani Muslims. There's, you know, majority of paedophiles are actually white males. A lot of people jumped on the bandwagon and just tried to use it for their own gain.
Right, well, Gerard Batten, that is one of the victims who has basically said that there are people using this for their own political gain. You're one of those people.
No, I'm not. There are paedophiles across the whole of society. For example, the BBC covered up Jimmy Savile for 50 years, didn't they?
Are there white paedophiles?
Of course there are.
Right, but and do you condemn all white people because there are a few white paedophiles?
The BBC covered up the whole Jimmy Savile thing for 50 years. Yes, there are, and I would come down on those people with the full force of the law. In this particular instance, there is the industrialised exploitation in sexual slavery across the country, which is not just being done for the sake of a perverted lust, but for business, run out of cab offices, run out of fast food offices, where girls are trafficked up and down the country.
But you're condemning all Muslims who sign up to... But you are condemning a whole community, all Muslims, men, women and children, if they adhere to an ideology that you think is hateful.
I'm not condemning individuals, and I've never spoken about individuals. I talk about the ideology. And you know, because you've had me on this programme before.
And who are the people who follow that ideology?
Well, that is their decision.
They are men, women and children who are part of the Muslim community. So you are condemning a whole community.
First of all, I don't know how much they know about their own ideology. Perhaps you should have someone and ask them. I don't know how much they're signed up to it. I don't know how many agree with it. There are lots who leave that religion. I know because I've spoken at conferences.
Right, so is the only Muslim that you like someone who leaves the religion?
No, I have no problem with people who obey the law, want to live in a Western liberal democracy.
And the majority of Muslims do.
And can integrate with that. My problem is always with the ideology, because the ideology is the root of the problem.
Right. It is a religion, by the way. It's not an ideology. It is a religion.
All religions are ideologies.
I go to church every Sunday, and I am, in many respects, proud of the Catholic Church. I am not proud of the sexual abuse that has happened, but I don't condemn my faith, the people who go to my church, all priests, because of sexual abuse. Those who are responsible need to be dealt with and feel the full force of the law, and it's the same across any faith.
The Catholic religion, which follows the gospel, nowhere in the gospel does Jesus say, those you have taken with your right hand you may possess.
But not everyone signs up to every letter of what is in religious text.
Some Muslims do in relation to sex slavery, because it was something that their prophet did and something that they think is acceptable.
What would you do? What would Gerard Batten in Ukip Britain do with Muslims who are and follow their religion and their text?
Nothing. Well, those who want to obey the law and don't cause a problem, I wouldn't do anything any more than any other citizen. But what we must do is take action against this kind of thing. The first step is actually prosecuting these cases rigorously. I'm not sure it's happening as rigorously as you might think, because it's still going on in a widespread way. And what we need to do is to stop importing this ideology, which most of the, or half at least of the mosques and imams in this country are supported by places,
because it is a religion for Muslims
Saudi
in this country.
Arabia and Pakistan, who are importing extremist ideology to us, and we need to clamp down on that. And it is an ideology because it's a belief system. All religions are ideologies because you sign up to a particular belief system.
Toby?
I think that, of course, the fact that there are some Muslim Pakistani men in places like Rotherham who've engaged in this appalling predatory behaviour does, of course, not mean that all Muslims should be condemned. I think where their religion, their ethnicity was a factor, is that it meant that these crimes weren't investigated and prosecuted as promptly as they should have been by police officers and other authorities who are worried about being accused of racism.
But has it been used as political opportunism by people like Gerard Batten to underline what is, and many people would regard it as, hateful rhetoric against Muslims?
Yes, but let's not single out UKIP for committing that sin. After all, look at all the attacks on Brett Kavanaugh in the United States recently, people singling out his ethnicity, privileged white male. This is how a white male would behave, an entitled white male, etc., etc. His ethnicity was used to condemn him, and all white people were condemned because he was white. Exactly the same sin if we're talking about committing that error.
How do you feel about a party like UKIP, a party that its former leader, Nigel Farage, said shouldn't be turned into an anti-Islam party or an anti-Muslim party? He was relatively successful, you could argue. Gerard Batten is obviously ignoring that advice from Nigel Farage. How do you feel about wanting to change the party's constitution so it could allow someone like... Well, you would like the members to change it to accept someone like Tommy Robinson.
I think flirting with Tommy Robinson, I mean, whoever was to blame for the grooming scandal is one thing, but the idea that Tommy Robinson is any kind of solution, considering his history with the English Defence League, I mean, I used to live in Nottingham, and I remember they came to town one day and rampaged through areas of the city where ethnic minorities live, where Muslim community was based, causing trouble, vandalising things, starting fights. None of this which was condemned by Tommy Robinson at the time. I mean, I don't know why the media still gives Tommy Robinson a platform. He doesn't represent the working class. He's a hot air merchant. He's not been elected to anything. And the fact that UKIP is now flirting with him, I mean, that says a lot about the party, and I hope its demise continues to be.
And the party under you, what do you say about Nigel Farage's warning to you?
Well, Nigel is wrong. Nigel didn't come to the conference 2 weeks ago, and if he had have done, or he came for the dinner afterwards, but he didn't come to the actual conference, and we had 2 days of about 1,400 people there from up and down the country who are totally behind me and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do for the party. So if I didn't have the backing of my members, then I wouldn't lead UKIP, but I do, and I intend to speak out truthfully, honestly and vigorously for the things I believe in and the things they believe in.
I mean, would you be happy to accept Nick Griffin, for example,
Absolutely
into the
not.
party?
The BNP,
Why?
Because the BNP has its roots and origins in neo-Nazism, and we do not want to be associated with that at all. We never have, and for the 25 years that I've been in UKIP, we have always had a prescription on people like the National Front and the BNP.
But you'd be happy to agitate for violence against those Muslims as you see them as extremists?
That is an absolutely outrageous thing to accuse me of.
No, I'm asking you. I didn't accuse you. I
have never advocated violence towards anybody.
So why do you support Tommy Robinson?
For you to ask me on here and say that to me is not only insulting, it is a gross abuse of your position with the BBC.
No, I asked you at the beginning, you support a man who says that the community, the Islamic community, will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again.
That may mean that they were going to turn up and demonstrate against it. It doesn't say that they're going to be violent.
What's the full force?
Well, if people turn out in a mass demonstration, that's full force, isn't it?
Right, all right. And
that doesn't mean they're advocating violence.
I said, would you be in favour of agitating or calling for? I said it at the beginning of the interview too, you just didn't answer the question. Fine, you said you wouldn't, but you would be in favour of mass demonstrations. Mass demonstrations go on all the time. 1 million people demonstrated against the Iraq War, didn't they? All right. Did it make any difference? You wanted to say something about the cadets. You wanted to say something about the cadets, and I said you would be able to say.
First of all, it's a bit of a non-story because those cadets are merely trainees. They're not even in particular regiments or groups in the army. They are a group of trainees who turned out. They were in a car park. It was a spontaneous thing. And they actually then wanted their picture taken with Tommy Robinson. Now, that is not against any army ethic because it's not in the Queen's regulations that say you can't have your picture taken with a celebrity. So this thing has actually been blown out of all proportion.
Gerard Batten, thank you.